Hi, I'm Tom Luna. I'm a former school board member. I was privileged to serve as senior advisor to U.S. Secretary of Education Rod Page. I also had the honor of serving for 8 years as Idaho State Superintendent of Public Instruction. During that time, I also served as president of the Council of Chief State School Officers. One thing I have learned in all these experiences is that educating children is not rocket science, it's more complicated. On my podcast, Swimming Upstream, we will visit with courageous leaders who challenge the prevailing tide and inspire all of us to swim against the current. Let's jump in. Welcome back to another episode of Swimming Upstream. I'm Tom Luna. I'm your host, and we are here at the Excel in Ed conference here in Salt Lake City, where hundreds and even thousands of educators from across the country have gathered to kind of learn from each other and to build enthusiasm and motivation for improving our education system, whether you want to call it reform or modernization. We're all very aware of the fact that more needs to be done to help more kids be successful, and our public education system is critical in making that happen. And so we're so pleased to have another guest with us, Commissioner Manny Diaz from the great state of Florida. Welcome to Swimming Upstream.
Thanks, Tom. Great to be here with you.
Manny, you and I met, Commissioner, when you were a freshman legislator in Florida. And now you're the Commissioner of Education. Talk to us a little bit about that journey, some of the committees you served on, and what you were passionate about education then when we met, I could tell. And now here you are as the Commissioner of Florida.
Yeah, well, I started my career in education as a teacher and an administrator, and then was fortunate enough to get elected to the legislature, had the opportunity to chair both the Choice and Innovation Committee, Education Appropriations Committee in the House, and then was got elected to the Senate, was the education chair in the Senate. And that decade-long journey kind of led us to where we are today, and it's an exciting time in Florida. That's as it's been for the last decade in education. But right now, we're happy to be on the forefront, cutting edge, so to speak, on everything education.
Yeah, and Florida has been for some time. Matter of fact, Jeb Bush is kind of the host of this event, Governor Bush, and this conference focuses oftentimes on the things that Florida has done and is doing. And many states have found great ideas that they've replicated. I know when I was state superintendent in Idaho, many of the things that we learned from Florida, many things that we learned at this conference were the things that we knew we could do in Idaho also. And then with the support of Jeb and others, we went forward and worked to improve education.
Well, in Florida, despite the accolades, we understand you can't rest on your laurels, and you constantly, the best defense is to be on offense.
There you go.
And reform, like Governor Bush says, reform is never finished. We're so fortunate also to have Governor DeSantis, who is leading on education and really pushing the envelope and continue to push forward. And so I'm very happy to be in this role, to be able to have an impact, continue to have an impact on education from a different perspective. But our goal is to continue to have Florida lead the way, and that means not standing still and continuing to push forward and implementation of policies going forward.
That in and of itself is great counsel for any state. A third grader is going to be a fourth grader next year, right? So we have to continually move forward to make sure that this education is meeting the needs of all those kids as they get older, and we recognize more things that we need to do. So let's talk about the fact that coming out of the pandemic, and then recent NAEP scores have shown us that we've lost up to decades of learning because of just a short period of time that education was disrupted. Some can make the argument that the progress we've made over the past couple decades should have been greater. And that's one reason we've lost that much student achievement. But the fact is, looking forward, we know that we have children where we need to do some form of accelerated learning. Talk to us about what Florida's plans are when you look at the fact that we have a whole generation of kids that are at risk.
Well, number one, I think we're fortunate in Florida under Governor DeSantis' leadership to keep our schools open, and there was a slight interruption, but getting our kids back in school, I saw we held the achievement gap. We didn't lose ground in the achievement gap from white students to our African American students. Hispanic students saw some gains, students with disabilities, students on free or reduced lunch. Having said that, I think we are already looking at ways to continue to make sure we improve. Number one, I had the benefit of passing the progress monitoring bill in the legislature, in the Senate, that now it's the first of its kind in the nation, where Florida is going to go to progress monitoring 2 times a year, and then a third waypoint where we actually have our summative test. It cuts down on the amount of testing, on the time that it takes for testing. It gives back results to the teachers immediately so they can adjust their instructions, and it gives the parents a report so they understand what's going on and they can support what's going on in the classroom. So that's perfect timing because of what we saw of the situation with COVID. Number two, we're looking at other interventions, at other aggressive forms, not only in reading. The legislature has invested, Governor DeSantis has led on revamping early learning. And I think, Governor Bush did this a long time ago, where we said at third grade, we put a stop, and we're not going to allow you to go forward until we get you on grade level. But we're realizing under Governor DeSantis, even that may be too late. And we're focusing our efforts on early learning. We have a progress monitoring system implemented there. And we're going to put some resources not only into more reading coaches. Professional development is incredibly important, and we're going to put some focus on math as well. We're looking at investing monies on professional development for our teachers to help improve the instruction in math and help with the math, the learning gains with our kids. And also long term, maybe putting in some math coaches to kind of dovetail along with what we already do in reading. So, but I think the importance is so important to get those students early, make sure that they're on reading level so they can read to learn, which is, you learn to read so you can read.
That's
to learn,
right.
and
That's
it's
right.
so important to get them early. And I'm so glad that Governor DeSantis has led with that, and our legislature has followed with investments and also policies that lead to that.
It's really the combination of both, right? More money alone is not the answer.
Correct.
Right. But the whole time I've been involved in education at the national, state, and local level, I never said take some of this money back. We can't figure out where to spend it. Right. There's always places that you can use money effectively, but you have to look at how you're spending what you currently have. Identify what's working, what's not working, do more of what's working and less of what's not working, right? And
you have to be able to measure, and you have to be able to admit where you're wrong and change directions, or when something becomes obsolete or archaic, and make that change of direction. One of those points where I think we're going to focus on is teacher preparation programs. Where how do we prepare our teachers now, today, the science of reading, making sure that our students are prepared to read in a manner of which they're not memorizing, but actually sounding out words and being prepared for the upper grades. So I think all of that, there's going to be a lot of reform going forward.
We're hearing a lot about science of reading. As we visit with a number of state chiefs at this meeting. So talk about how science of reading is impacting specifically the work that you're doing in early literacy.
Well, it's important because if you have students memorize and use things like sight words and things of that with the whole language, they don't build the foundation to be able to truly read and have reading comprehension going forward. When you use the science of reading, students truly understand, and it's like teaching somebody how to fish instead of giving them a fish.
Yeah.
They're able to go through and sound out words and then comprehend what those words mean. And once that foundation is built, that student can become a lifelong learner. And by the way, that doesn't just affect reading.
That's right. That's right.
It affects the other subject areas, including math.
Including math, yeah.
Right.
I think what's critical, and I'm glad that this is referred to as the science of reading, because it really is science-based. Right, the what's being used, we know it works. It's been studied.
Right.
The research has been done. We know this works, and quite frankly, we know what doesn't work when it comes to reading, like whole language and stuff that you were talking about.
It's the science-based part is how does the human brain function, and how does it take in information, and if you learn how to dissect words and be able to sound them out and then understand the meaning of those words, makes you so much stronger going forward, because we know that once you get past third grade, that gap just gets wider and wider if you don't have that student have those fundamentals. And I think it even reflects in scores across the nation when you look at the time when students were affected. If students were affected in, even in Florida, when students were affected in first grade, they were in their formational years. If you look at our fourth and fifth grade numbers, they increased on our state test because some of those students had an interruption at one point in their formational years. It's so important. Now, the work of trying to catch that up is going to require some additional resources and assistance. But again, we have to measure where we're spending and make sure that we're getting return on investment. The answer is not just to throw money at the problem, as you mentioned before. It has to be targeted.
So you mentioned earlier about how critical it is right now to provide the right kind of improvements or modernization when it comes to teacher preparation. Also, how important the teacher is in this whole process. We know that when a child shows up at school, the most important factor is the quality of the teacher in the classroom. Florida and other states are dealing with fewer teachers in the classroom, fewer teachers available. We've known that this was going to happen for 10 years just because of an aging population. But when you look at the need for great teachers, and at the same time, there's fewer of them entering the profession and many leaving the profession, what are some of the strategies to address that?
Talk about the bell curve, the number of teachers that enter the profession and are hitting that 30-year mark and exiting because they're retiring. In Florida, thanks to the leadership of Governor DeSantis, we've been very aggressive creating alternate pathways, including the military pathway we just created. We're looking at teacher apprenticeship models, a major teacher recruitment campaign. You have to continue to feed that pipeline and go even down into the high schools where you get students who become interested in teaching. And that's the formula. It has to be a long-term formula. It can't be just a short-term fix.
So multiple pathways, multiple on-ramps, multiple off-ramps, right. For
and look,
a
the
career in
whole
education.
issue of certification, I believe we have to go back and look at that. I mean, the current certification schemes in some places doesn't guarantee you. You mentioned before the number one component is if you have a quality teacher in front of students, that's when you're going to get. That's the most important factor. There's two things: the leader in the building,
that's right,
and the teacher in the classroom.
Yep.
The leader in the building is going to set the tone, the culture, attract the right teachers. The teacher in the classroom, often is said, they could be under a tree. Literally, they're going to be better off. Those students are going to be better off than the ones in a shiny building that you spend millions of dollars on with a teacher that's not prepared, it's not quality. So we have to continue to optimize having quality teachers, attract them, and retain them. That's another thing that Governor DeSantis has led with over $2 billion invested from the state, never done before in Florida, directly to teachers' salaries to make sure that we retain and that we attract those teachers quality teachers into the classroom.
Yeah, fantastic. Florida, under your direction and under Governor DeSantis's leadership, is been focusing a lot on making sure that when students graduate from high school, they're prepared for the world that awaits them. Workforce ready, type efforts. Share with our listeners the work that Florida is doing in those areas.
One major component of that is having targeted investments into our state college system, which I also oversee, where Governor DeSantis has made those investments to assure that if a student doesn't need to spend 4 years in school for a degree that's not going to benefit them and then go into debt, there's other options. Not everybody's going to go to college. They can go through these programs at the state colleges, or they can get credentials in high school. We're starting to see more and more in that of Florida. We have charter schools that are now being authorized in partnership with our state colleges that provide what they call stacking credentials. Having a student come out of high school and be able to go into a high-wage job. Having students maybe just go to the state college and do a 2-year degree where it's very, very affordable in Florida because our tuitions has not been increased in a long time, to be able to then go directly into the workforce, not being saddled with thousands of dollars in debt and going directly. But I think we're pushing even further into the high schools to create more of these credentials, to create dual enrollment programs that tie into careers, that tie into college credentials, so that they have a shorter runway to get there and they don't have to be saddled with debt.
Perfect. So Florida has always been the leader in recognizing a parent's role in education and providing more and more choices in education. And so, talk to us about the latest efforts and kind of where Florida is in that effort to increase and expand parental choice in education.
Yeah, and again, this is something that over the 10 years I was in the legislature, when the Governor DeSantis came in, one of the milestones is he said we're going to eliminate this wait list that we had with the tax credit scholarship, and we were able to create the Family Empowerment Scholarship. And 2 years ago, he signed legislation that expanded it. It was the largest increase in school choice, the largest school choice bill in the country at the time, and we're going to continue to build on that. And again, we've done so much in Florida that there are things we have to tweak and continue to look where we improve it. We want to make sure that the growth, again, is quality and the parents have good options and they can maintain that. But we're going to continue to keep our foot on the accelerator when it comes to parental options, school choice. In Florida, parents have a say, and they don't co-parent with the government. They have a say in their child's education, and we're going to continue to expand those options from parental rights to school choice.
And you've been doing this long enough in Florida that you have the evidence that expanding school choice has helped some of those students that and demographic of students that have struggled for decades, right? But closing those achievement gaps, giving kids with special needs more opportunities, the choice that you've created, giving parents of those children more and more options, the evidence is there that those students are improving, the achievement gaps are getting smaller, and it's working.
Yeah, not only for the students who choose the school choice programs, but there are studies that have shown that the education level and the quality education at our district schools have improved since we've had our school choice programs in place. Because what happens when you create a competitive market, what do district schools do? They raise the bar.
That's right.
They raise the bar, and they have to compete, and they create a better educational. So now parents, who benefits at the end of the day? The parents and the students do, because you have a plethora of options from charter to scholarships to ESAs to magnet schools to the Florida virtual. I mean, we just have options across the board in Florida that create a competitive market and increase the quality of the product for the end user, which is a student.
Well, Manny Diaz, the Commissioner of Education in the great state of Florida, thanks for being our guest on Swimming Upstream. I'm going to put you on the spot for one moment. So the other guests, we've been asking them, tell us a fact or a piece of information that is unique to Florida that most people don't know. Some interesting fact, some fun fact about Florida.
Oh, that's a tough one that people don't know. Florida's on the map so prevalently, I think nationally, it's hard to find a piece of information that people wouldn't know. I think a lot of people forget that Florida was a Spanish colony at one time.
Well, there you go. All right. We appreciate you being on the show. We'll have you back. And folks, Manny Diaz, Swimming Upstream, and has been swimming against the current for many, many years. And we appreciate your leadership in Florida and across the country.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. And remember, our children may only be 22% of our population, but they represent 100% of our future. If you found this conversation valuable, subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on your favorite podcast platform. Swimming Upstream is part of the Strategos Podcast Network. To view the entire lineup of our shows, visit our website, strategosgroup.com.